Hello, everyone. Today's session is about using service learning to engage youth voice. This on-demand session is presented by NYLC. I'm Henry Shi. I'm a member of the NYLC Youth Advisory Council, and I will be one of the presenters today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zahra. I'm a member of the NYLC's board, as well as a mentor to the current Youth Advisory Council, and I will also be helping to lead this session.
So we'd like to provide some background on NYLC, which stands for the National Youth Leadership Council. We are a national nonprofit based out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and for over 35 years, NYLC has been developing young leaders, supporting educators, and advancing the field of service learning. The mission of NYLC and all of its work is to create a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world with young people, their schools, and communities through service learning. Specifically, the Youth Advisory Council is a group of young leaders from across the United States who help advise and work with NYLC leadership to advance these goals. The goals of today's presentation are, number one, to understand the service learning process and how you can get involved in service learning. And number two, to understand how youth voice is embedded within the IPARD process, which is essential to service learning. Before we begin and dive right into today's discussion, we'd like you to start by just listening to your surroundings. Whether it's completely silent, whether there's a hum of a laptop in your room, or if there's some outside noise, just try to listen and be aware of those sounds. Next, try to center yourself. Push those away now and try to focus on yourself, your learning, and this presentation that you are now viewing. And finally, try to set an intention, a goal, or something that you're trying to take away from today's session so that you can enter with your mind prepared and ready to learn.
Thank you for helping us through that, Henry. There are some important concepts to understand before we get into the IPARD process, and the first one is community service. So what is community service? It's an activity that engages people in addressing the needs of their schools and communities. Usually there are solo events like community cleanup that address the blanket needs of the community. The next concept to understand is service learning. There are many definitions for service learning, but the definition that we use is that it's an approach to teaching and learning in which students use their academic knowledge and civic skills to address genuine community needs. This is getting students outside of the classroom to continue their learning in the real world by investigating root causes of genuine community needs and addressing them through direct service. There are a lot of similarities and differences between community service and service learning, but one of the biggest ones is that service learning is a process, not a project. Service learning is a continuous cycle, as you'll see when we get to IPARD, whereas community service engages community members for one set goal for a set period of time to complete a preset set of goals. It's a lot of sets, without any additional learning done. So to get us started on IPARD, we have this diagram on the screen, and as you can see, it's a continuous cycle. The steps are investigation, planning and preparation, action, reflection, and demonstration. I'd just like to direct your attention really quickly to see that action is the smallest section of the IPARD circle. It is the most visual of them, but a lot of the learning and development happens in the pre-service and the post-service.
So the first part of the IPARD cycle is the I, which stands for investigation. This step is really crucial to begin any sort of service learning project. But unfortunately, when many students volunteer or create a service project, they don't put enough effort and time into this investigation phase, and they jump pretty much very quickly into the action phase. The investigation is very important because during this phase, students will research and observe needs in their community. By thoroughly going through this investigation phase, students can understand the most important issues that their communities are facing and be able to craft service learning projects that are impactful and meaningful within their community. Once students have decided on an issue that they believe is important within their community, they need to decide on an action. And this also occurs within the investigation phase. Students should know that there are many different types of action that can be completed within the service learning process. This could range from spreading awareness for a certain cause or issue, completing service, whether direct or indirect, advocacy, to advocate for certain causes, or philanthropy, which includes not only just raising money, but also running drives, for instance, and other activities as well. So the point is that there are many different actions that students have options for within the service learning process, and they should decide on one that will be uniquely fit for their particular goals.
The next step is planning and preparation. And at this step, students and young people will use the knowledge and research gathered during investigation to identify a realistic and meaningful service project with clear goals, timelines, roles, and follow-up activities. This includes collecting all the resources necessary, generating public awareness, setting up a venue, whatever is necessary for your particular project. This is also a really great step for youth voice because the planning and preparation isn't something that's set aside for the adults to do. It's something that the young people can get into and practice organizing. The next step is action. Once again, the action stage is the smallest, but it's also when all the hard work sort of comes together. At this stage, the actual service is completed and data and results are collected for the next two steps. And just a reminder of the different types of action, the ASAP, awareness, service, advocacy, and philanthropy.
The reflection piece is a very important component of the IPARD process. While it comes after investigation, planning and preparation, and action within the acronym IPARD, in truth, the reflection piece needs to be present throughout the entire service learning project to have maximum effect. That means that students should be reflecting before, during, and after the entire service learning process. In addition, reflection should be wide-ranging, and it should not just be focused on one particular component of the project. Students should reflect on the issues, on their action, on the impact of their project, and also on the next steps that are possible even after the project has been completed. And finally, students should keep in mind that there are many different ways to go about reflection. Too often, students will think of reflection as a written response or a journal diary or a journal entry. But in truth, there are many different approaches that all work particularly well with reflection. And students should get creative with this. They can use linguistic, which encompasses written and verbal approaches, kinesthetic, which relates to body, visual, which could be art, for instance, or musical, either through musical performance or composition. And the point is, overall, reflection piece is really important, and it needs to be wide ranging. It has to be a part of the project throughout and on all different components. By really approaching the reflection process with diligence, students can take away a lot more from the service learning project and really get not just the service, but also the learning, to learn about what they've done, and also how these actions or steps can shape them to be better in the future. And finally, the D in the IPARD acronym stands for demonstration. In the demonstration process, it's really important that students are able to share information about their project. During this phase, it's really about solidifying their service learning and celebrating their project as a whole. So during the demonstration component, it's important that students consider three important questions. Number one, who needs to know? Number two, why do they need to know it? And number three, how are you going to tell them?
So now that we've gone through the IPART cycle, that's a lot of information. So to give our brains a rest and a chance for our bodies to, get up and get moving, let's do the shakeout energizer. So I'm going to direct you in shaking out parts of your body. So go ahead and stick out your left arm and give it a few good shakes. Wake that up. Your right arm, your left leg, your right leg. And go ahead and do one full body stretch before refocusing as we continue. So this next part of our session is really about how to, now that you know about the IPART process and service learning, how to get started. And coincidentally, we have a toolkit on getting started in service learning, done with funding by the Allstate Foundation. We have developed the following toolkit that has fillable unit planning outline, community partners maps, student action plans, and also a service learning educator readiness assessment. We also have a series of guidebooks available at the link that you see on your screen right now. So take a moment to make note of that. And these service learning handbooks focus more in depth on how service learning can be implemented in schools and also how to best develop them for whichever project you choose to work on. We also believe that service learning goes really well with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. Just for some background, when the UN originally looked into what made these goals fall short, the millennial goals fall short, they realized that they hadn't involved young people, which is why we believe that service learning is the best way to address these new goals. In 2015, the UN corrected that and committed to achieving these 17 goals by 2030. But to do that, we need more youth voice.
And NYLC believes that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are very important, and they should be very closely connected with service learning and youth voice. As a result, NYLC has created several handbooks about each of these sustainable development goals and their connections to service learning. And these are all available on the NYLC website as well. So we encourage you to take a look at these resources that we also have available. And if you've been interested by our presentation and are feeling a little bit more inspired about taking action, this video is funny and interesting and kind of relates to some of the things we've been talking about And it's also going to give you an idea of how to inspire people and bring people on board to your service learning project.
I think we need to stop the video and just start it. We're not hearing the video. So Zahra, I think you need to.
Yeah,
You're not?
I think
I
you
need to
might
be
have to
unmuted.
unmute.
So let's just start the
Yeah.
video, the Kid President video over. No worries.
I will stay unmuted this time and see if that helps.
There are lots of ideas how you can change the world. Some people think you should just complain about it. That won't change the world, you'll just make it bad. Some people think you have lots of money, make it rain everywhere you go. I live for a dollar. Some people think you have to be really loud and yell a lot. It's like with a bullhorn shouting, "Hey you, yeah you, do it my way right now." You heard? Other people choose to just make fun of everything. That's dumb, everyone's dumb. It's easy to make fun of stuff, but it's cooler to make stuff. Some people think changing the world can only be done by the smartest person in the world. Just put them in a room, let them figure it out. The solution of world hunger? Food. Wow, that was like so amazing. Some people see the bad in the world and they just decide to ignore it, but that won't help anything. Some people think you have to be really famous, super cool. In fact, lots of people think you have to be really powerful to make a difference, like being mayor or senator or president. But the truth is, a title doesn't make you more important. The world is changed by you. It's one person filled with love, and they just have to live it out. So they do something awesome, and that person is filled with love, and they do something awesome. It just goes on and on and on and on. And the next thing you know, everything's awesome. Some people think it's impossible to change the world.
It's impossible to change the world.
Well, you can see why they could think that. Living in the world with kids who are hungry, people who are homeless, families weren't happy. I'm just trying to figure it out like everybody else, man. I do know this though. Next time you feel overwhelmed or totally alone, remember this. Things don't have to be the way they are. The world is changed by ordinary people. Little people living out big love.
Thank you again for joining our session. Just quick, like to mention the NYLC's logo, serve, learn, and change the world. All of the information and the handbooks that we have mentioned earlier are available at our website, www.nylc.org. And if you have some questions about them or just would like to reach out to us, you can use the email on the screen, info@nylc.org.
Thanks again for sticking with us through this presentation today. We hope you've learned some stuff, and we hope that you're feeling a little inspired to take what you've learned and convert that into action within your communities.